Before we begin, take a breath. This isn't just a podcast. It's a new way to think, speak, and live in English. Welcome to Confluent Podcast, where words flow, confidence grows, and every sip brings you closer to fluency.
It's just incredibly rewarding to sit down and explore this material with you today.
Totally.
Especially given how drastically it challenges. I mean, it really completely dismantles the traditional classroom model we all grew up with.
Absolutely. Because our mission for this deep dive is to unpack some, highly unconventional strategies from a very prominent English teacher.
Right, the host of the Confluent podcast.
Exactly. And we were looking at language acquisition methods that just completely bypass the rote memorization.
Yeah, grammar drilling.
Yeah, the drilling, the rigid textbooks. Instead, we're focusing on methodologies that map directly onto how the human brain actually processes new information.
Right, from infancy all the way up through adulthood.
Yeah. So what's our blueprint for today?
Well, we're going to cover some pretty surprising territory. First, we'll explore this video-based tool that was actually engineered for cognitive therapies.
Which is wild.
It is. And we'll unpack the neurological reasons it accelerates learning for, anyone.
Okay, love that.
Then we need to dissect the infamous silent period in language learning, because the rules for children and adults are
completely inverted, right?
Completely. And finally, we'll break down how microbursts of learning can fundamentally alter how you master a language.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I really want to start with that video tool.
Yeah, let's do it.
The English teacher in our source material specifically highlights a program called Gemiini that's spelled with two I's, right?
Right, Gemiini.org.
Yeah. And what immediately stands out to me is that this wasn't even intended to be an ESL tool.
Not even a little bit.
It was built for a totally different purpose, right?
Yeah, it was created nearly a decade ago by a mother of twins on the autism spectrum.
Oh, wow.
Her kids were experiencing profound language delays. And when you look at the neurology of certain cognitive condition...
Or like sensory processing disorders.
Exactly. A standard environment can just be way too much. There's too much noise, too much social pressure.
Too much visual clutter, I'd imagine.
Right. So she needed a way to give her kids language in a format that stripped away all of that environmental static.
It had to be super clear.
Crystal clear. High repetition, highly visual, and entirely devoid of stress.
I mean, necessity driving invention, right?
Totally.
She effectively built her own digital version of TPR. Total physical response.
Yeah, but tailored for hyperfocus.
Let's actually walk through how this works for the user, because the mechanical breakdown is fascinating.
Go for it.
So if the target word is dance, the program doesn't just show like a cartoon character dancing while a voiceover plays.
Right, that's what typical apps do.
Exactly. Instead, first it states the word clearly. Then it displays the text, just the letters, D-A-N-C-E.
And then, this is the crazy part, the program cuts to a hyper close-up of a human mouth.
Right.
Slowly articulating the word dance.
It is literally just a mouth filling the screen.
Just the mouth, which is actually a brilliant biological hack.
How so?
Well, when you learn a language in a typical classroom, you rarely get to see the micro movements of the tongue.
Or the lips and the jaw. You're usually sitting way in the back of the room.
Exactly. By isolating the mouth, your mirror neurons can fully engage.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
You see the physical mechanics of the sound, which removes all the auditory mystery.
And then after the mouth isolation, the program layers on the context.
Right. It builds up.
It shows pictures of people dancing, then video clips of people dancing.
Yeah, and then a video of two kids.
Right. One dances, the other points and says, "You are dancing." Then they swap roles.
And the other kid says, "I am dancing."
It's like watching a complex sports play from multiple camera angles.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You get the wide shot for the context. You get the slow motion instant replay with the mouth close-up.
And the stats with a written word.
Exactly. All in one package.
Yeah.
By the time you've watched the sequence, it is literally impossible to misunderstand the vocabulary.
Right. The mechanics are totally demystified. And our source, the English teacher, shared a really personal application of this.
Yeah, he used Gemiini with his own son, didn't he?
He did. His son was facing a speech delay, so he implemented this strict routine.
How much time are we talking?
90 minutes a day.
Yeah.
But, and this is key, split into 3 manageable 30-minute blocks.
Okay, so like morning, midday, and evening.
Exactly. And the neurological activation he observed is just wild.
He noticed a change in a single day, right?
One day, his son used a brand new word directly from the video.
That's incredible.
But the real shift happened around day 10.
What happened on day 10?
He described it as the speaking centers of his son's brain simply, well, turning on. His son didn't just parrot the video anymore. He suddenly started verbalizing words he had heard his parents use weeks prior.
Words he had never actually spoken aloud himself.
Right. The input had been in there all along, just sitting passively in his brain.
So the extreme clarity of the Gemini method basically gave his brain the scaffolding it needed.
Exactly. It pulled that passive vocabulary into active production.
And connecting this to you, the listener, whether you're an adult learning a second language or maybe you're helping a child, the underlying mechanism is universal.
It really is.
When you use a translation-free, highly visual method, you completely bypass the cognitive load of translating from your native tongue.
Right. Because staring at a bilingual dictionary forces your brain to do exhausting arithmetic.
Yeah, it's just math at that point.
Yeah.
But overwhelming the senses with pure context creates a direct neural pathway.
Which leads right into, honestly, one of the most polarizing debates in language education.
Oh, the silent period.
Yes. Should a beginner start speaking immediately, like from day one, or is it better to observe in total silence for months?
Right. And the methodology diverges sharply here, depending on the age of the learner.
Very sharply. Let's look at children first. A child's brain is naturally predisposed to a silent period.
They just soak it up.
Right. They soak up the syntax, the phonetics, the vocabulary, all without the frontal lobe inhibition that adults have.
So the speaker in our source material is incredibly firm on this point for parents, right?
Uncompromising. He says, do not force your kids to speak.
He shared that classic scenario. An eager parent knows he's an English teacher.
Oh, yeah, the performance thing.
Right. So they push their child forward and demand, say something in English to the teacher, perform.
Which biologically is entirely counterproductive.
Because it triggers a stress response.
Exactly. When you force a child to perform for a stranger, the brain releases cortisol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and cortisol actively inhibits the hippocampus.
And that's the part of the brain responsible for forming new memories, right?
Right. It literally stops learning in its tracks. It breeds anxiety and shyness.
So it's perfectly fine if kid just consumes English cartoons, games, and videos for years without uttering a single sentence.
Totally fine. If they comprehend the input, the foundation is being built perfectly in the background.
Okay, so the silent period is a protective, healthy cocoon for a child.
Yes.
But here is the massive twist. The English teacher argues that if you are an adult learner, you must abandon the silent period entirely.
Right. He advocates for what he calls the Benny Lewis approach.
Which means you speak immediately, failing as much as possible right from the start.
Exactly.
Wait, I had to push back on this. Why is the silent period a healthy cocoon for a child, but suddenly a dangerous trap for an adult?
What's fascinating here is that the primary barrier for an adult is no longer neurological.
What is it then?
It's profoundly psychological.
Ah,
Children don't have calcified egos, They don't care if they sound foolish.
that's true. My niece will mispronounce a word and just laugh.
Exactly. Adults, on the other hand, are chronic perfectionists. We use language to signal our intelligence,
Our competence.
our social status.
So losing our native language feels like losing our identity.
Yes. We overanalyze grammar because we are terrified of being judged.
So if an adult stays in the silent period too long,
The fear of speaking doesn't dissipate, it metastasizes. The longer you wait, the higher the perceived stakes become.
oh, that makes sense. The teacher shared his own misstep with this, right? When he was learning Thai.
Yeah. He tried to remain in the silent period to build perfect comprehension.
And what happened?
He found that the longer he observed, the more paralyzed he became at the thought of finally opening his mouth.
Because making an inevitable mistake felt like a huge failure after all that studying.
Exactly.
The pressure just compounds in your own head until you're too terrified to even order a coffee.
Right. So by forcing yourself to speak immediately, you're essentially doing exposure therapy.
You have zero vocabulary, zero grammar.
You're going to sound completely incoherent.
And when you survive that, when you realize that butchering a sentence doesn't destroy your social standing,
The perfectionism shatters.
you drop the ego and finally start communicating.
You transition from trying to be a scholar of the language to simply being a user of it.
Okay, but if adults are supposed to speak immediately and fail constantly, that sounds exhausting.
It can be.
And if kids aren't supposed to be drilled with textbooks,
Yeah.
how do you actually structure a learning day so it sticks?
This is where we look at the mechanics of microlearning.
Right.
Specifically, methods that actually respect the human attention span.
Which is pretty short these days.
Very short. Our source shares this hilariously fast method for teaching toddlers based on the Doman method.
Oh, I love this part. Because usually, if you tell a parent to do flashcards, they envision this grueling 10-minute battle of wills.
Right, where the kid is looking at the ceiling, crying, trying to escape.
Yeah, but the Doman method restricts the session to 5 seconds.
5 seconds is the absolute maximum.
Right, 5 seconds total.
Total. The foundational idea is rapid visual input. You want to bypass the critical analytical part of the brain.
So you just flash the information directly into the subconscious?
Exactly. You literally hold up 5 cards, say the sound for each one as you flash it for a single second, and put them away.
Boom. Done. The child doesn't even have time to decide they're bored.
And you just repeat it randomly throughout the day.
It's like snacking on a language rather than trying to force down a heavy multi-course Thanksgiving dinner of grammar.
That's a great analogy.
Nobody wants to feel bloated and miserable from overstudying.
No. And the content of those snacks is just as vital as how often you eat them.
Right. The English teacher highly recommends a YouTube creator named Jack Hartman for this.
Yes, he makes educational music. But the crucial takeaway isn't just that music is engaging, it's what the songs actually teach.
He focuses on the sounds of the letters, not the names, right?
Exactly. Knowing that the first letter of the alphabet is called I gives a toddler 0 functional tools.
Right. It doesn't help them read the word apple.
The name of the letter is abstract, but knowing it makes an ah sound for alligator or ant, that's functional.
Or using words they actually love, like F is for flamingo.
Right. They anchor the phonetic sound to a tangible, exciting piece of reality. They care about the big pink bird, not the arbitrary symbol.
And there's a massive application here for you listening right now.
Oh, absolutely.
If 5-second flashcards and phonetic songs work for kids because they eliminate friction, adults need to apply that same strategy.
Break your own learning goals into micro habits.
Yeah, the speaker mentioned his community is currently reading Atomic Habits by James Clear.
The synergy there is just so obvious. You don't need a punishing 2-hour block of study time.
You just need small, repeated actions. Watch a 5-minute video while boiling water for pasta.
Right. Have a 10-minute conversation on your commute. Small, functional actions.
So if we build this foundation using hypervisuals, respecting the silent period or breaking our ego, and relying on micro habits.
What happens when it hits the real world?
Exactly. What happens when this hits the chaos of actual human interaction?
That brings us to the crosstalk phenomenon.
Oh, this is my favorite anecdote from the source material.
That's such a great story.
So the speaker talks about his own kids playing at a park with a group of Japanese girls.
Right.
The Japanese girls were speaking entirely in Japanese, but his English-speaking kids understood them perfectly.
And replied entirely in English.
Yes. They achieved perfect, seamless communication using 2 completely different languages.
They essentially created this bilingual ecosystem. Nobody was translating, but everyone was playing by the same rules.
They were just running around coordinating a game.
Yeah.
And the speaker noted he intentionally didn't intervene.
Right. He didn't pressure his kids to reply in Japanese.
Because forcing that production would introduce the stress we talked about earlier.
Exactly. They were achieving the ultimate goal, which is comprehension.
Which really highlights how this redefines fluency.
It completely redefines it. We have this academic notion that fluency means passing a test or mirroring a native speaker perfectly.
With like an encyclopedic knowledge of grammar rules.
Right. But true fluency is just comprehension and human connection.
In fact, the source notes that conversational fluency really only requires the 2,000 to 5,000 most common words.
Which is such a relief to hear, honestly.
So what does this all mean?
It means the barrier to entry for genuine interaction is drastically lower than textbooks lead us to believe.
So you don't need to lock yourself in a room until you're perfect.
No, the goal is to start interacting long before you feel ready, especially for adults.
And the source offers some really actionable advice for adults wanting to practice without pressure.
Yeah, platforms like italki.
Right, where you can find a language partner. You spend 30 minutes teaching them your native language, and they spend 30 minutes helping you.
It completely levels the playing field. You're both vulnerable.
You're both making mistakes. The objective isn't to study them, it's to just chat.
You practice the Benny Lewis approach. You talk, you make a mess of the grammar, you stumble over the vocabulary.
You intentionally shatter the perfectionism by prioritizing connection over accuracy.
Exactly.
Well, this entire deep dive really flips the traditional classroom model on its head. Let's recap the core takeaways for you as you apply this to your own learning journey.
Good idea.
First, lean into hypervisuals and repetition, like the Gemiini method. Bypass the translation dictionary.
Second, honor the psychology of the learner. If you're guiding a child, respect their silent period. Don't force them to perform.
But if you're an adult, shatter that perfectionism by speaking early and failing often.
And third, embrace microbursts of learning. Snack on the language. Don't force the Thanksgiving dinner.
I love that.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ultimate purpose of acquiring a language is to connect with human beings.
Right. It's not to become a walking grammar dictionary.
It's to understand the Japanese girls on the playground. It's to use a clumsy handful of words to share a laugh with someone halfway across the world.
It strips away all the academic pretense.
It really does. And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today.
Oh, lay it on me.
We've talked extensively about how adults paralyze themselves with perfectionism in language learning.
Because we're afraid to leave the silent period.
Right. But it raises a much deeper question. In what other areas of your life are you staying in a silent period simply because you're afraid to look foolish making a mistake?
Oh, wow.
What if the absolute fastest way to master your next big life goal is simply giving yourself permission to sound like a beginner?
That is a phenomenal question to leave us with. Thank you so much for joining the conversation today. Take a breath, let the words flow, and enjoy your learning journey. We'll catch you next time.